to the Spheres of Spirit with Nancy Myers, aka the Lady of the Light. Nancy will discuss the everyday magic and wisdom of spirit which surrounds each of us, waiting to be discovered. She will share some of her remarkable orb photos, proving that our angels, guides, loved ones in spirit, and even pets surround us and guide us in our physical world. During this episode, Nancy will discuss one of the many spheres or aspects of spirit available to us based on her orb photography. She will also share a special channeled message from her guide, Leonini, and do an oracle card reading to help guide you along your personal spiritual adventure. And now, here is your host, orb photographer, author, medium, and speaker, Nancy Myers.
Hi, welcome. I am Nancy Myers, and today I am so excited to have my friend, an amazing adventurer, harpist, singer, composer, sound therapist, my friend, Ani Williams. Hi, Ani, welcome back.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much. I know, many hats, right? Put this on and then the other one, and yeah.
But you're good at all of them. Is the term... what is that? Jack of all trades, master of none does not apply to you. And I'll tell you why. I first met Ani back in 2012 when we were in Scotland. And I have been on 2 sacred tours with Ani. I've been lucky enough to kind of have a private tour with Ani in the landscape of Sedona. I've taken her sound alchemy class. And each time I'm with Ani, I am just in awe of the knowledge that she contains. I remember one time sitting on the bus driving through France, I think it was, and I go, how do you know all this? And today we are going to talk about kind of you put all that knowledge, or a lot of it, in your new book. Here it is, the long anticipated Guardians of the Dragon Path. It is so chock full of knowledge and information, Ani. It's just incredible. It's I'm going to have to read it 3 times just to absorb it all. So tell us a little bit, number one, about the title and what inspired you all those years ago.
Gosh, the title is Guardians of the Dragon Path. And first of all, the Dragon Path is many things to me. It is the Paris Meridian that runs through not only France, but all the way through Catalonia to Mallorca. And where the Paris Meridian ends is called Isla Dragonera, or the Island of Little Dragons.
Wow.
And when I saw that, I thought, okay, this feels like a dragon path, and I started exploring it. It reminded me when I had visions of being the spine of a great dragon, carrying this telluric force that actually comes from the stars. And I started discovering that there were many ancient sites, including megalithic sites 6,000 years ago, established on this same path, the Meridian and Dragon Path. And guardians are the ones, not only dragons, because they're very, very popular in the Pyrenees, especially with the Basque traditions, but all over Spain. They really still believe in dragons, and they believe that the dragons are in control of the weather patterns. So actually, this sounds really strange for probably a lot of people, but I started being approached by dragons, and I wasn't looking for them, and I had never met a dragon before, but they started coming with messages for humanity.
Wow.
And how we need to work with the subtle realms. And this, I think, fits into what your work is doing, acknowledging the subtle dimensions, and expanding our own bandwidth, however we do that, with belief in magic, belief in wonder, that childlike wonder, using sound to expand our bandwidth of perception, meditation, etc. There are many, many, many ways. So that for me was the dragon path. It opened up some magical realms across the Pyrenees range.
I'm going to bring up the first picture if I can, Chris, just to kind of set the tone here. And this is actually an orb I captured in Glendalough, Ireland, in a tiny little church that was built in the 12th century. But it's just so faceted and beautiful. But there is a Chinese proverb, and it says, "A dragon's pearl is only as valuable as the wisdom it reflects."
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chris. And, there's such a resurgence, Ani, in interest in the dragons. And it's like, it's time for them to come up. I have a thing with dragons, and I did a show on dragons. So I'm right there with you. But
Mm-hmm.
could you explain, because in the book, you talk about the dragon path and the meridian. Is it one and the same?
Well, in my knowledge, there are many dragon paths on the planet. And Rory Duff is an English geologist, retired geologist, and geoengineer. And he discovered that there are many, many dragon paths across the planet. Many of them run north-south. And science tells us that a lot of the galactic stellar energy enters the Earth at the North Pole and travels down the natural meridians between the North to the South Pole. And so a lot of these energy lines or dragon lines run north-south. This one happens to run on the Paris Meridian, but it's certainly not the only one.
Oh, okay. Okay. So can you tell us now, I know you were inspired, you talk about it in your book, by your great-great-grandmother, yes?
Yes. I remember when I was about, I think 3 or 4 years old, maybe 3 years old. We visited her in Los Angeles at her home, and she had a beautiful rose garden. And I didn't know why, but I couldn't get close enough to her. And there are these photos of me leaning against her and just wanting to absorb whoever she was. I had no idea who she was. Learned later that she was a very well-known author and poet. And in the early 1900s, she traveled alone around the world many times lecturing. And her favorite place on the planet was the temple in Egypt of Hatshepsut, the queen pharaoh of Egypt. And I thought, okay, great grandma, you wrote many books, you're a poet, you're an inspiration, and I just really wanted to dedicate the book to her and her 2 brothers because my great granduncles were authors of ancient history, and wow. I quote them in the book. So I felt like it was an important legacy to acknowledge. Mm-hmm. It's like we stand on the shoulders of giants always.
Right. Wow, your lineage is quite impressive, my friend. So what drew you then to this area? The Pyrenees, Spain, France.
Yeah,
how'd that start?
It pulled me. My friend, the late Nancy Safford, got a message from the elementals in the forests of this area. And she knew me from Sedona, and she was told by these elementals, they said, bring Ani with her harp. So we, in 2006, we planned a pilgrimage together, and I brought my harp. And as soon as I landed, I knew I was home.
Wow.
It was just really, it pulled me in. And then I started having quite a few dreams guiding me to do certain things in the Pyrenees. And mainly the dream to light 4 fires. And
do you want to go into that a little bit?
Well, just a little, in that it was a very simple dream. It was a direct message. You need to light. The message was there have been traditional fires lit in these mountains, and I discovered later that they light them still every year on summer solstice. And I was told that I also need to light 4 sacred fires to open my awareness to these sacred mountains. I wasn't told where. That was part of the adventure.
Wow. Wow. So you've visited, I mean, you live in France. So has it been 18 years then that you have explored? You're so brave. You describe a lot of the places and the conditions that you explored in, and I go, "Oh, my friend, I would have been so worried for you." But do you have so you did this adventure through to find these 4 places to light these fires, and you made so many discoveries along the way. Do you want to pick out a few of your favorites or a few of the most important?
Yeah, one of the most striking things was that in finding sites that really spoke to me and lighting the 4 sacred fires, I realized that each one of them, after going and being there and seeing what was at each of these sites, I realized that I was lighting fires in these sites of 6,000-year-old megaliths, and there were not just one at each. So what I discovered is a great cross in the landscape. And the 4 fires ended up to be marking the 4 arms of the Great Cross. And at each end of the arm, there were groups like 20 or 30 or more of these megalithic structures, which was including standing stones, dolmens, which are like stone houses. And these are tombs, ceremonial sites, and markers of sacred time. So they mark the wheel of the year and the sun's journey through the year.
And did you meet a dragon along that way?
Well, I met a couple. Yeah. So on the Paris Meridian, I was exploring near Mount Canigou, Canigou in French. It's the highest peak in the Eastern Pyrenees.
Oh, wow.
And it's a sacred mountain to all the people of Catalonia. You can see it from quite a distance from France and Spain. And I got a room there for a few nights, and I wanted to explore the region because it was in the Pyrenean area of the Paris Meridian, called the Valley of Pi, P-Y. You know the life of Pi?
Yeah.
And Pi is that sacred geometry of creation.
Absolutely.
The book kind of reads, and my life kind of reads like a fairy tale, because I find these places and you think, could this be real? But anyway, I was in the Valley of Pi, and I felt there was a big disruption along the meridian there. So I couldn't sleep, and I was doing mantras. I was doing the Gayatri mantra for hours and hours, because I know that mantras purify the energy of an area. And after a while, I heard this big crashing in my apartment. And I thought, who's there? It says, I'm here and I'm tired of your mantras. I said, who are you? And he said, I'm Drac. I'm the guardian dragon of the mountain and the valley. And I said, well, how can I help you? And he said, well, stop the mantras. I'm kind of tired of it. But if you could play a song for me from your harp, harp heart, right?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, Drac, I will be happy to do that. And, tell me what else I can help with. But could you wait till morning? Because it was 3 a.m. So the next day I took my harp up on the mountain and I played a song for Drac I call Dragon's Serenade.
That is, now I have to backtrack a little bit. First of all, you mentioned all the names that are so amazing on your path, and they go back. They're all tied in. The names of cities, the names of places, of valleys, of mountains. It's incredible how they all go together when you research what's the history of this name. And you have done such an amazing job of that in your book. And what?
Well, I was just going to say, to comment just on that through studying names of places, you can learn about the character of a place and the history.
Yeah.
And it leads to a lot of interesting stories, legends, and history.
And then you go, oh, no wonder, that makes so much sense. You know, that's what I kept finding myself saying as I was reading your book. That makes so much sense.
Mm.
And then the other thing that I wanted you to talk about a little bit, you mentioned your harp, and you took your harp with you on this adventure. And I have been in the presence of you playing your harp and in some amazing places. And you can literally feel the atmosphere change when you start playing, Ani. It's incredible. In fact, you mentioned the Dragon Serenade. Now, do you want to tell the people about the music that accompanies this before I talk about the Dragon Serenade?
How about at the end?
Okay. Well, Ani composed that song for the Drac. Dak or Drac?
Drac, D-R-A-C. It just means dragon in Catalan.
Okay. And that is one of my favorites. The harp music, I mean, you're a phenomenal harpist. It literally takes you to another dimension. It did me. I went, oh, this is so beautiful. So I hope he liked it as much as I did.
I think he did. And he wasn't the only dragon I met, and they all wanted songs. And I started to realize that actually the elementals, the invisible realms, whether we talk about angels or dragons or elemental kingdoms, which I believe the dragons on some level are interwoven with the elemental kingdoms.
Yep.
They feed on beauty. They feed on music. Mm-hmm. So it's like dragon food, and somebody might think, this gal's crazy. And in fact, my born again, he's the grandpa of my granddaughter, but I'm not related to him on the other side. But anyway, she said, Grandpa, why don't you read Nana's book? It's really good. And he goes, oh, what? Do dragons play music these days? And he was so close to the truth, and she just kind of chuckled.
Yeah. Well, we hear all the time of the music of the spheres, or the tones in music when people experience the other side. It's and it's incredible. So you talked a little bit about the book. Was this I want to say you were guided, obviously, to do this. So did you feel like you were healing or reawakening, or because you talk about, and I'm going to show some pictures in a minute, you would sit there and play this music and things change. The fires would change things. But was that one of the reasons why you were doing this, Ani?
I just do what I'm guided to do, and I usually find out why afterwards. I took my harp to each of the sites, as you mentioned, and what I did is I practice a certain thing called geomancy, dowsing, and I use copper L rods to measure the energy field in trees, stones, people, whatever. So I would go into a site and I would measure the baseline energy field of, say, a megalithic dolmen. And then I would connect with the site, first of all, listening, honoring, the site for whatever its purpose was. Because we don't know, it's a mystery. But through repeated visits and studying the orientation and what it's aligned to. Oh, so it's aligned to summer solstice sunrise or winter solstice sunset. So I would go into the space of the dolmen and play music as an offering. And I would just listen to the site first. and it would almost always be a new song for the
Wow.
site. And then I would measure the site again, or I'd make my prayers or whatever, and then measure the site again, and discovered that the site normally would at least double, sometimes triple or more. And so what happens is that when these ancient people built these megaliths, they were designed to be a network, a matrix in communication with each other. And they were measuring the cycles of time, the movements, and also helping to regulate the harmony for all beings, for crops, for people, for animals. And so if the life energy was kept alive in these sites and they were worked with, that energy field would keep pulsing. So what would happen when we work with these sites and make offerings, bring our love in whatever form that is, they increase. And then all the matrix in that whole region becomes a shining, like a radiant zone. So you not only increase the energy in one site, it increases the whole. Like if you have a huge stone circle like Stonehenge and you just work with one stone, they're in a resonant entrainment with one another. And when you douse the other end of the circle, they also expand to the same degree. We've done a lot of experiments like this. So it's like healing one person, and then the people that person meets are also receiving that energy and that clearness, that clarity, that love.
Yes. I'm going to talk about, if it's okay with you, maybe the invisible cross that you buried in your dream after the break. But Chris, can I bring up the second picture? Because I've already said when I'm in the presence of Ani playing her harp, you can feel the difference. And I have two pictures of when I was lucky enough to be listening to her play. And the one on the left, it was she struck the last chord of her harp, held her hand out, and there was an orb kind of at the end of her hand. And you're not going to be able to see that, but I know it's one of her guides. And it's almost like the great grandmother on the picture above you. And the other one was at the sound alchemy class, and Ani was again playing her harp, and just the whole room shifted. And so I took a picture, and there was that orb directly on her, soaking in all that beautiful love and music. And I know, Ani, you said that at one point you took a picture. Thank you, Chris. You took a picture, and after you were done, and had some orbs appear in your photographs.
Yes, this was at one of the series of, there were many dolmens, maybe about 9 in a row, marking the western arm of the Great Cross. And this Great Cross, it starts in France and ends up in Spain, and each axis is about 90 miles long.
I'll hold up the map. Can you see?
Yeah, so each one of those axes are 90 miles. So it's a huge cross. So the one on the left at the west was where we were working with 9 dolmens in the 100-year snowstorm in Spain a few years ago. And I had received a dream. Thank you, Nancy.
Yep.
I had received a dream that was like a Star Wars epic movie. It was full color, and I was part of a galactic family. I've never told people these things because it just sounded so wild.
I understand.
I came out of the closet with my book.
Yep. Yep. I understand.
As you did too. And so it was a galactic family whose purpose was to place an invisible, it seemed like it was made of some sort of plasma material. And it was an equal armed cross, and it could have been hundreds of thousands of years ago. I don't know when it was, but we came as a unified family. We placed the cross over the Pyrenees, and that was it. Then I meditated on it and I got a little more information. Then I had another dream that that cross had been altered and tampered with so that the radiant zone over the Pyrenees was being disrupted somehow. So my dear friend, who's an author and Earth Mysteries, he works with ancient sites, Juan Saez. And I contacted him to help me out with this. And he looked up the site where I saw that it was disrupted in the West. And indeed, there were some dolmens that actually had been moved.
Oh.
And there were high power lines that were erected over the others that were disrupting the electromagnetic field of the dolmens. So we had set up a time to go and work together at these sites. And lo and behold, we were in the midst of COVID, and all the borders between countries, even between France and Spain, were absolutely closed. You couldn't even go out of your house without a slip of paper giving a reason for why you were going. I mean, It was total shutdown here.
Wow.
And so I wrote to the Catalan government, got permission, got all this paperwork. I was doing research for a book with an archaeologist, blah, blah, blah. And we got across the border. But the night before, there was the 100-year snowstorm, and all the roads were iced up, and there was snow everywhere, and no one was on the roads.
And you went anyway.
Because I found over the years of doing pilgrimages to different sites that when there is a big obstacle, and you're not getting like, okay, it's a bad sign, it's danger, danger, but it was just, if there was an obstacle in the path that just felt like it was telling me sometimes that the power of the work that needed to be done.
I see.
So I went anyway.
That was one of the stories when I read about it in your book. I went, oh my gosh, Ani, you are so brave. But I often wondered, and we're going to take a break here in a minute. I often wondered, why do we need to follow these lines? Why are these energy lines so important to us? And you said it so beautifully in your book. If I can read this quick passage, let me put it over here so I can be by my, you said, these building their temples along these lines, telluric lines, would strengthen, renew, and increase the flow of energy. This, in turn, would have benefited the people and the wildlife, provided abundant food sources, and increased a feeling of well-being. I never understood why it was so important to the ancients to follow these lines until I read that in your book. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to go into the Mary Magdalene connection if we can. Wow. So we'll be right back after these words.
Om Times TV. The story told in Entering the Light Fantastic, Discovering Life After Life Through Orbs, is about Nancy Meyer's spiritual and emotional rising from the devastating ashes of loss caused by the sudden and unexpected passing of her son Robbie. Just like the legend of the reborn phoenix, Nancy's life purpose and focus was transformed. With the help from her son in spirit, Nancy found herself providing proof through orbs that our souls do not die with our bodies. In her second book, Encircled by the Light Fantastic, A Deeper Journey into the Light with Orbs, Nancy continues chronicling her path of gaining spiritual knowledge and expanding acceptance of what is possible, while traveling to many sacred and ancient sites around the world. She shares these experiences with you along with her photographs of remarkable spirit encounters. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Pasta and time for dinner.
Oh, it's really those.
Pasta dinner.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
And I'm back with my dear friend, Ani Williams. So, Ani, I know, because I've been to France with you, that the people there believe that Mary Magdalene, along with some others, came to that area after the crucifixion. And there are so many things, Mary Magdalene. But can you talk about, because you even on your book title, you said a Magdalene Meridian. So can you talk about this connection and what you discovered?
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. Most people concentrate on Mary Magdalene's presence in Provence, the legend of her coming ashore with the three Marys to Les Saintes-Maries de la Mer or Marseille. And it's always been over in that eastern part of the coast of France. But there are many legends that I discovered and historical documents that talk about her coming into Aquitaine. And Aquitaine is the area of France that borders the Atlantic, the Bay of Biscay, and the Pyrenees, where Bordeaux is, for instance. And so I started looking at Mary Magdalene's sites across the border in Spain, and because everybody's talking about her in France. And I discovered that just in Catalonia, which is a tiny northeastern section of Spain, there are 64 Mary Magdalene sites from the medieval era, hermitages, monasteries, etc.
Wow.
Churches. And in the western end, on where they have the northern Camino, the Camino de Compostela, de Santiago de Compostela, there are 94 just in the northwestern section.
94.
94 churches to Mary Magdalene. In fact, peninsulas named for her, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought, okay, there's something going on here. It's not just France, it's about Spain as well. So then I started noticing a tremendous amount of Mary Magdalene sites that were constructed right on the Paris Meridian Dragon Path. And I started visiting those sites and finding extraordinary artwork in these chapels in the Pyrenees that told a story about the knowledge that Yeshua, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene held. And the story is embedded in the art and carvings at these sites. And they pointed to knowledge of Egyptian traditions and Hermetic traditions that went underground when the Roman Christian, the Roman Catholics took over Christianity. And some of these things, even though they're well known, in the Vatican Library, a lot of these things. But they had these Hermetic traditions that came out of Egypt and Greece and so forth, had to go underground. But I do believe that Jesus and Mary Magdalene carried these forth, and she was the emissary. She had the mission to carry this, and that she did come into Spain with this message of love of the original teachings.
So I found it fascinating when I read in your book, because you do the connection to Mary Magdalene all the way back to Isis, and the ceremonies and the beliefs and all that. But what I loved is you said Notre Dame was really Mary Magdalene. And I learned that, maybe you know this, or can verify it, that the Notre Dame Cathedral was built upon an old temple of Isis. Is that true?
There was a statue to Isis, apparently, in below. And this is all over Paris. A lot of people talk about the name Paris coming from Iset or Isis. Per means house or pharaoh.
Oh.
Or house of the pharaoh. Par-Is. Par-Isis. Anyway, it's fun. But that was also the name of the Celtic tribe that lived there. So that's probably really where it came from. Yeah. But anyway.
See what I mean about her knowledge?
My brain, you don't want to be in my brain, it will make you crazy. But a lot of Paris, it was marked with statuary to Isis. And they happened to be on the Paris meridian, and they were placed most likely in Roman times because the Romans had a cult to Isis. They adored her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we find these traditions, of course, the Madeleine, there are quite a few Magdalene sites in Paris, as well as Isis. And Isis isn't there anymore. But these statues marked, I think it was in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, the beautiful church on the Meridian. There was an Isis statue apparently there as well. So yeah, you can trace her, and then down into Catalonia. There's a fantastic Isis temple that I believe we went to. Were you on that trip?
I think so.
There's a site in Catalonia where there are temples to Isis, Artemis.
Oh, no, I was not on that trip. No.
And one of the first ruined churches now, it's just a ruin now, but it was one of the earliest churches to Mary Magdalene in all of Spain, 370 AD.
Wow.
And there was a very early one as well at Montserrat. And did you know at Montserrat, we have our black Virgin, black Madonna there. Well, before that, there was a church to Mary Magdalene.
I did not know that.
And the biggest spires at Montserrat, which are extraordinary, three of them are named for Magdalena.
It's so abundant in that area. And did I read that the Templars built a lot of those churches that you were talking about on these?
Yeah, and absolutely. There's a chapel to Saint Michael or San Miguel at Montserrat that is 8-sided. And when you find an 8-sided temple in these cathedrals or churches, they're usually Templar. The Templars built their places in these 8-sided. And actually, to go back to what you said about Notre Dame, it was my Templar friends who told me that a lot of the sites that are named Notre Dame and established by the Templars were actually dedicated to Mary Magdalene, but thought to be Mother Mary.
I love that.
Yes.
I read that in your book and I went, oh, I love that. That makes so much sense.
I mean, we love all the Marys. They're all wonderful.
Right.
But actually, it all went to Mother Mary through the Catholic Church. And actually, there were many Marys, as you know.
Well, it was a title, right? Mary was a title, not necessarily a name. Is that correct?
No, it's a name as well, but it was
Is
a
it?
very, very important name. Yeah.
So here's this dragon path that's been there for thousands of years. Why was Mary Magdalene so important to this dragon path? Why were there so many churches put there?
It's a really good question, Nancy, and I believe it goes way back. When ancient people discover those telluric or energy currents that run from pole to pole, the ancient people that were building their stone temples placed them there for good reason, to mark the energy and magnify that energy. And people throughout time tended to build their structures not just on those lines. We can't simplify it that much.
Mm-hmm.
But there were so many sites marking that line that it shows that there was an attraction, a natural sense. Now, how did they know? Ancient people were more sensitive than we are today. They weren't so bombarded by all the distractions and the media. They lived closer to nature, so they sensed subtle energy, which comes back to your work. They saw plasma forms.
Mm-hmm.
They perhaps saw the dragons. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But they were much more attuned to subtle energy.
Yeah, and they realized how important it was and how much it benefited them, right? As you wrote in your book that I read. I was wondering when I was thinking about that question that I asked, the people of that time knew how important this area was, but they also knew how important Mary Magdalene was. So maybe they married the two. They gave both of that the equal status of, I don't know. That's what I think. So,
Yes.
on your cover, and you talk about this lady. Do you want to tell us who she is?
Yeah, she's Our Lady of Elche, Elche. And she's an Iberian priestess, princess, or queen. We're not sure. But she was discovered near Alicante, near the coast of Spain, south of where I live. And she was discovered, I think, in the 1800s. But basically, she's dated to about 300 BC or so. But she represents, in my mind, and this is from all the research I've done, she represents a lineage of great priestess oracles that came through the traditions of Astarte in Phoenicia. There is a story in the book in which I tell about the princess Elisardito, who was the sister of Pygmalion. And when their father, the king, gave them the country or the region of Byblos in Phoenicia. Long story, I'll let them read the book. But basically, Elisa came to Carthage and founded Carthage. And she brought with her 80 priestesses of Astarte. I almost said Artemis. Astarte. And they were astronomer oracles and prophets. So this tradition also then came into Spain, as we know. And the tradition coming into Spain started at least in 1000 BC. So we have this tremendous Eastern Mediterranean influence from Egypt, Greece, and Phoenicia coming into Spain. So she's one of the girls.
Well, and her story, audience, is fascinating. Even what she is represented wearing on the statue is
her great ear wheels are similar to the Hopi ear wheels. Yes. And some people have said all kinds of things, that she's related to Atlantis or whatever. We don't know. We can guess. But I definitely think she's related to the great priestesses that became Iberian.
And the wheels that are here, to me, it's like Princess Leia. I wonder if, that's was his inspiration. Um, I'm going to ask you one more thing here on the cover, because I think this kind of, oops, where'd it go? The medallion.
Yes.
Was that, spirit with me sometimes works years and years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of figure out, oh, that's what this is.
Right.
So do you want to talk about how this medallion came into your life and how it kind of led you on this amazing adventure?
It set me up, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Mexico City doing a concert and workshop tour on sound, and my concert sponsors took me to this beautiful place south of Mexico City, and I was in this beautiful marketplace in Coyoacan, and this medallion in silver was reflecting the setting sun, and it was like a mirror. And it was shining at me. I mean, it was quite a ways away in this little market stall. And I kept looking at it, and it drew me to it. Mm-hmm. And so then I went, and I looked at it, and it had all kinds of symbols and codes and things. And my sponsors saw that I was enchanted by it. So they bought it for me, and they put it on me. And I realized it was an equal arm cross, and the middle section letters in Latin stood for "Let not the dragon be my guide." And immediately I said, no, let the dragon be my guide. And then I discovered the equal arm cross that is the same symbol on the medallion. So it became, I took it to the dolmens that I found, and I would put it in there, and I would just honor the ancient ones who placed these grid systems in the earth so long ago to create a benevolent energy.
Ani, I'm going to ask you a question. You wrote this book. What do you want your book to do?
Inspire, educate. I think more than that, though, to show us that each one of us is a guardian. Beautiful. That we are all guardians of life on this beautiful planet. And like the astrophysicist that I met in the Paris Observatory, he was the head of exoplanet research. And,
just how that whole thing unfolded, that's when you know you're guided. And audience, you have to read that in the book. It's so fascinating.
And when he, I said, well, have they found, other places like Earth? And he said, unfortunately not. We need to really protect this planet.
Yeah, how special it is. Let's talk about the music.
Oh, yeah.
So I like I said, I have heard the music. It's is there 20 songs total?
Yes, that's right.
And the I already said the Serenade was one of my favorite, and the other one that just took me to another whole universe was the Swan. Your harp playing is just exquisite on that. But tell the audience about the music and how they can get that.
Okay, so the music, the journeys, first of all, to all these different sites became a path of songs. In Spanish, Camino de Canciones. And because songs were given at the sites, songs were given by the different guardians, like Artemis or Our Lady of Montserrat or the dragons, all the stones had songs. Yeah. So many songs were birthed, and I only put 20 of them on the double album. But the journeys that I talk about in the book, each site has a song, a special song. And I wanted to create a multimedia experience for people, not just the written word, but the images that are not only in the book, but the music. And then we created a series of 15 videos to be another avenue of experiencing the sites.
Wow.
so that people can learn more about the sites. Some of them are just music videos, but some are documentaries and music videos, so that they get the music and the history of the sites and the legends. And it's just such a rich area. I mean, it's no accident that the Camino de Santiago de Compostela was positioned or created right along the ancient way of the stars that was created 6,000 years ago. And that was also a musical Camino because people always sang when they walked to give them strength. So the whole area it has this flavor of music.
Your book is on Amazon, and it's a book that you can experience along with Ani when you listen to the music and watch the videos. It's very unique. You don't usually get to experience the energy, but listening to your music, especially those two songs for me, I was there, So audience, it's an amazing book. It's chock full of information. We couldn't possibly go over everything today, but Chris, can I bring up the last slide here real quick? And then I'll do my message from Leonini, and I'll pull a card for everybody. So this was a orb that I just got last week. And I don't know who said this, but and Ani, you said this kind of during our interview. Some won't see the dragon because they have lost the magic. So thank you, Chris. So it's like it's always been there, but we are now in a position maybe to finally open our eyes. Would you agree with that, Ani?
Absolutely. It's time to work with the invisible realms, to acknowledge their presence, because we can't survive alone. We have the angelic realms as messengers. We have the elementals in charge of the weather. Look at the weather. We have to work together.
Yeah. I have done a show on elementals. I have done a show on dragons. I have done a show, on the orbs and the subtle energies and believing in magic. And so I always sit before my show and I ask my guide, Leonini, for a message. And this is what she gave me. Have you ever been on it's so ties in with kind of what you did. Have you ever been on a hike and unexpectedly come across a dangerous animal? Suddenly, fear grips you and you become frozen, unable to move, unable to make a decision. All of your instincts blunted. It is literally paralyzing. But after a moment, your senses come back to you. You draw upon your knowledge, faith even, and just as suddenly, the animal seems to move on. That feeling of fear, of being frozen, can paralyze you in other ways. When you separate yourself from the divine, from source, fear can easily stand in your way like a dangerous animal. How do you send that animal on its way? Connection, faith, education, expansion, curiosity. When you follow a dogma of fear-based ideology, it can keep that dangerous animal forever in your path. But when you are able to reach beyond the tired norms, you see that the fear standing in your way is but a kitten. We urge you to explore freely the possibilities without the threat of that dangerous animal known as fear, impeding your knowledge. The time has come. So I went, wow, that was powerful. So let me pull a quick card for everybody. I have my goddess deck because we were talking about Mary Magdalene. And I'll just let you know, at my last couple shows, I wasn't able to pull a card because I ran out of time. And I know I have 2 minutes here, right, Chris? So let me, one more shuffle, they said. Wouldn't it be funny if I pulled the Mary Magdalene card? You never know, right? And I don't set this up, so let's see who I pulled here. And here's the deck and the card that I pull. Oh, it's Cordelia, and it says, "Go outside. You have been indoors too long. Go outside and get some fresh air. And we were talking about reconnecting with the elementals and nature and how important it is. So that's the message for everybody today. Get out in nature, get away from those screens, turn off your phones and reconnect. So
After they watch your show, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Unless you're watching my show.
Nancy, really quick, can I just say that the album and the video map that comes with the album is only on my website. It's not sold on Amazon or anything. The book is on Amazon and all major book outlets, but that music is only on my website.
And your website is?
AniWilliams.com, A-N-I Williams.
Okay. Ani, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for finally getting this book out and the amazing job that you did it. But of course, for being with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.
Take care. Love you too. Take care, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.